Flyfirstclass.com. Flyfirstclass.com.
Daniel Webster once said, make them intelligent and they will be vigilant. Give them the means of detecting the wrong and they will apply the remedy. We are all about helping spread the word, helping get people involved, motivate them. This is the Sound of Freedom, Orion Talk Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Brooks. And folks, make sure if you haven't heard Solveneur Radio, you check it out this Sunday, all right? It's Sunday mornings from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern Time. It's the absolute truth all the way from the Netherlands with your host, Solveneur. Tune him in on Sunday mornings from 10 to 12 Eastern Time, only on the Orion Talk Radio Network. The stuff Walter talks about blows me away. I mean, he's got a better understanding of the English language than I do. But anyways, check out Solveneur Radio. Thanks again for tuning in, folks. We have our special guest and my good friend Matthew Hayward on the phone to talk about full spectrum dominance, political involvement, to be or not to be, rather. And talking during the break, he gave me a good idea here. I'm going to tell a quick little story about my own trials and tribulations, if you will, since I've kind of, realized we have a problem. And when I reached out to Matthew, I was all about political involvement, direct political action. You know what? I'm going to get involved with Ron Paul. And, we made all the phone calls we possibly could. We did everything that we needed to do for the campaign to help try to win Washington for Ron Paul. We did very well. Got a very close second to old Willard. But from there, I went to my caucus, and I was nominated to go to the county convention. And I decided that was about a month later. And within that time, I just started to get run down. I got myself a job working at a factory. I was listening to the Tip of the Spear every day, like die hard, just, every day. I mean, it was like a drug. And I started to kind of just feel like helpless, like, you know what, this is not, I didn't even go to the county convention. And if I would have went, somebody like Matthew could have gotten the necessary votes to continue on to the national, the RNC. I mean, so it really, I beat myself up about that. But what I'm saying is, I pretty much, for a little while there, got so revved up and so hyped up and thought I could do stuff politically. And then I just took a pause and said, you know what, politically, it's just gone. This whole getting involved with politics, I mean, my hat is off to Matthew. He also has much more patience than I do. I find it very hard to deal with people who just kind of, they're like the socialites, like, oh, party, Ron Paul, woo. And then when you want to do something, they're nowhere to be found. But what I'm getting at here is that I've pretty much dropped out of being politically involved. And with things that are going on now in my own state, in my own backyard, we've got drones coming in Seattle. We'll talk about that later. We've got Agenda 21 creeping up on my new county that I just moved to. The old county I lived in, Agenda 21, they're trying to implement it. And what I'm saying is I went a different path, and Matthew mentioned it in the first segment about we all have strengths and weaknesses, and we should all try to use our strengths to be involved. And I've always figured, hey, I could do radio. I've had a lot of people say that. So that's the path that I chose. However, I still feel a little silly for not, I'm kind of walking a line as far as, to be or not to be, to get involved politically or not. I feel sometimes it's kind of a wasted effort. But with that being said, Matthew is going to pretty much smack me down on my own show and let everybody know why getting involved politically is still a good thing to do. Just hearing all that stuff, Matthew, what comes to mind? What do you want to say?
Well, I'll touch on a few things that I want to kind of circle back around to, and also want to point out that you weren't just a delegate to the county convention. You were also my county co-coordinator. And
forgot that part.
It was disappointing, but it wasn't like it was just you. My roommate didn't show up, who was a delegate. Another one of my friends didn't show up. And showing up is half the battle. I often say the future belongs to those who show up for it. And so, again, I want to get into that a little bit later. But I did was looking at a few things earlier, kind of thinking along the lines of, we all have our own strengths. We're all different, because I did want to go into Stefan Molyneux and Larkin Rose on this same topic, too, in a second. But I wanted to point out, too, that, there are lots of different types of personalities in people who are extroverted or introverted. There's different learning styles, whether it be visual, audio, musical, linguistic, kinesthetic, mathematical, and so on. And all of these things are incredibly important, whether you're going to get into blogging or radio or data entry or fundraising, whatever your strengths are. And so one of the things I wanted to point out that I went through when I was coming around and still am doing is seeking my own maximum potential. And there was a lot of soul searching and looking into me and learning about myself. And I think that's important for everyone to do, is to spend time reflecting and looking at themselves rather than constantly focusing outward. People need to figure out what their path is. If they're aimless and they're just walking around, I don't know how they can hope to accomplish a whole lot or contribute a whole lot. We really have to figure out what our strengths are and what our plan is and where we want to go forward. But, you know, I was really motivated to talk about Stefan Molyneux when I heard you talking, and Alex Jones and some other people who kind of present this message of, in my mind, it's sort of a defeatist message or sort of a hopelessness, whether that's the intent or not. And I was in Florida at the RNC, and what I was a part of was fantastic, and it was inspiring, and it was incredibly motivating. And I was perfectly aware of what was happening at home with our supporters who helped us get us there, who were sitting in their houses giving up. And that was a huge issue for me. And so I continued to tell all the delegates and people down there, we need to blog, we need to talk to our people, we need to make sure that they're not giving up at home, so that when we come home, it's like 2008 all over again, where everybody walked away from all of our success. And I started hearing more and more anarcho-capitalists being opportunists and coming out strong and hard, trying to essentially ruin everything we had worked for to take control of the party and to get positions of influence and the ability to educate people and inform people. And they came out telling everybody, quit, walk away, look at your hopelessness, look at your failure, you didn't succeed. And of course, they were absolutely wrong in many, many ways, which again, I want to talk about. But the RNC was really motivational. Talking to you was very motivational. And something I think about is, if you believe what they tell you, who benefits? And I don't think that I have a great deal of respect for Stefan, and I don't have anything bad to say about him. But one of my arguments that I'm going to touch on a few different times is, if you believe what he's saying, if you stop being active, if we all walk away, who's going to benefit? I'll tell you who's going to benefit: the power-hungry, greedy people who are controlling it, and the tyrants who are passing all of this legislation and the drones. There will be no fight if we walk away. And so that, to me, is a big issue. Stefan believes that freedom cannot be achieved through political action, thus he does not support it. He does, however, believe in spreading the idea of freedom. And so one of my arguments is that if you look at the case of Ron Paul, you immediately realize this, or at least I do, as this being kind of an oxymoron, to claim that you want to spread a message, but to oppose working to attain a platform in which best to spread the message. Again, you might question, is it really the best way? And Stefan does address this point in a talk that he gave with Walter Block versus Stefan Molyneux versus Ron Paul. But again, he admits that he's an atheist and essentially draws the line in this talk. So apparently Christians should lead the liberty movement. I'm sure that's not what he's saying, but that's what it sounded like when I listened to it, and that's ridiculous. Again, as I mentioned before.
Matt, I just want to give you a heads up 1 minute before a break comes in, so just keep going, but I just want to give you that heads up. Go ahead.
Sure. Again, I just wanted to mention that there's many, many different people from all different lines of thinking, so I don't think that's good. And he basically kind of brings that up to point out that he just puts it out there that it's possible that Ron Paul pushed people away from libertarian thinking because of his faith. And again, I think that that's a fairly weak argument, and he also gets into that a little bit more. I'll get back to it on the other side of the break, though.
All right, awesome. And it's just a shame. This is the short segment here, but folks, you're hearing stuff Matthew's putting down. He's not holding back any punches, and we're just getting started. We've got so much more to talk about. We will motivate you. We will get you at least to think outside of the box. This is The Sound of Freedom with our special guest, Matthew Hayward. I'm Ryan Brooks, and this is the Orion Talk Radio Network. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back.